Chairman, Mechanical Engineering Sectional Committee, members of the family of late engineer B.D. Rampala. It's about railway electrification, and perhaps the reason that me, an electrical engineer, has to deliver this seemingly mechanical engineering lecture is because I serve in the IESL Committee on Railway Electrification. So let's move on to the subject, railway electrification, soon to be a reality. I think in a forum at Institution of Engineers, this is the first time we are positively talking about railway electrification. Until about 2 months ago, it was always a proposal for railway electrification. I am going to tell you how a proposal is now very close to become reality. But before that, as we all know, public transportation is at crossroads. Either we do what has to be done or sink into more and more traffic jams. As we know, the people increasingly prefer private transport, not necessarily because they can afford it, because of poor reliability, poor punctuality, poor quality of service, lower frequencies, and problems of access. Obviously, Sri Lanka cannot go on building roads and importing more and more cars, because the roads will also be quickly filled up with the traffic. So obviously, I do not have to tell you, it has been repeatedly said, but people and the public who know that the only way to develop our transportation system and to keep our development going is to upgrade public transport. So, what do we have to do? These passengers have to be retained with the railways as long as they want to travel. Those of you who have traveled in trains in the 1950s and 60s would have seen similar pictures. The Fort railway station would have been exactly the same even 50 years ago, and the train on the left-hand side, even 50 years ago, the only difference would have been that it was a wooden carriage, whereas now it looks a bit more modern and colorful, but the people are still on the footboard. And people who traveled on the footboard 50 years ago, probably they are more than 70 years old now. How do we retain these people? Do we retain them on the footboard? Or do we push them onto the road and they do take very dangerous rides, as you see in this picture, or buy a small car and add to the traffic jams? But of course, improvements have been done to the railway network and services. As I care to list here, suburban sectors are mostly double-tracked already, new rolling stock, some colorful rolling stock is there, new intercity services are operational, improvements to signaling and safety, ongoing activities, but of course much needs to be done. And this requires investments of significant scale, which includes electrification and modernization, so that the railways can retain the present clients and attract more. A glimpse of the Sri Lanka railway network, just to refresh your memories. Line up to KKS is 411 kilometers from Colombo, the longest, and the other elements of the railway network. Of course, if you look at the Central Bank report, the performance of Sri Lanka Railways as summarized is given in this chart, and the operating loss on the last line has been increasing. Sri Lanka Railways are not to be blamed for this, as long as the ticket prices are managed by the government and railways cannot price them as they want, this anomaly, this problem will remain. Moving on to the subject, why electrification? Can we not do it with diesel-electric locomotives? Railway electrification offers rapid acceleration and deceleration, flexibility of operations, more frequent services, improved passenger comfort, lower maintenance efforts and costs, and most importantly, lower energy costs for existing passengers, more significant savings once road passengers are also a tractor to railways. And obviously, and even equally important, are the lower emissions and noise impacts of electrified railways compared with diesel electrics as well as the alternative road transport. Not only electrification, modernization is also expected by our passengers. They expect a higher degree of reliability and punctuality. There's a need to standardize stations, layouts, exits and entry systems, parking and connectivity to road transport, and safety of passengers, those living in the vicinity of the lines, as well as to road users who cross the track at level crossings. So, where do we start electrification and modernization? Where to start and where to begin? Electrify the entire network, and what are the economics? Electrify Colombo suburban network, and of course later other suburbs as well, leaving long distance services to be served with diesel electrics. Of course, all these need significant investment. And the general approach of railway engineers, as we learned from the visiting engineer from Indian Railways, whom IESL invited a few years ago, is to select a sector of adequate length to have a feasible service, and to select a sector that has the highest passenger benefit. So this IESL committee conducted various studies, obviously with good data support from Sri Lanka Railways, and found that the Panadura Veyangoda sector and the Kalutara South Veyangoda sector as well as the Fort Polgahavela sector are the sectors that serve the largest share or a significant share of passengers of Sri Lanka Railways. If you interpret this data, the Panadura Veyangoda sector serves about 44% of passengers who use railways every day, meaning people who get in and get off within this sector comprise 44% of passengers of Sri Lanka Railways. And in year 2014, the total number of passengers served per day averaged at 350,000. And of which, according to the Colombo Metropolitan Master Plan, Transport Master Plan, 210,000 actually crossed the Colombo city boundaries on train. Then the IESL committee ranked these sectors using various criteria and finally concluded that the Panadura Veyangoda sector is the most economical and the most beneficial in terms of passenger support to be electrified first, and obviously subsequently followed by an extension to Kalutara South and extension to Polgahavela as well, as we see in this summary chart. Of course, more recently, the Colombo Metropolitan Transportation Master Plan has been published, and the suburban rail electrification is the preferred choice with a ranking of first or second, as you see in this summary chart. Whereas the bus rapid transport comes ranking first, and bus priority comes ranking first in certain sectors. But railway is, at least in terms of overall economic, all the options to develop transportation in the Colombo metropolitan region. Of course, railway electrification has drawn the attention of not only engineer B.D. Rampala, but other visionaries whom we know of, who have worked in Sri Lanka and in this institution and elsewhere as well. Railway electrification has been proposed since 1924. Engineer D.J. Vimala Surendra had a vision to use hydroelectricity to serve trains. And if I may extract from a paper that he read about economic power utilization, he said from his study, which is based on equal train loads hauled, the saving in favor of the electric loco is the greatest. So he did a very comprehensive analysis, and he himself proved that electric traction is cheaper than any other means, including coal-fired locos that were available at that time. There have been more studies by IESL from time to time, and the transport specialist, Mr. John Diendas, if I may extract a quote from one of his papers in 1976, he says the bull and the 25 kV railway electrification are both appropriate technologies for Sri Lanka. This should have been the time when appropriate technology was the buzzword, just like sustainability today. So we move on. So the 20th century visionaries have done their part. Their wishes have to be fulfilled by the 21st century visionaries or the professionals. If they do well, they will also be called visionaries as we go on into the future. But we seem to be waiting for such champions to emerge. For how long do we have to wait? Institution of Engineers conducted this pre-feasibility study in 2008 with the support of the technical support from the Institution of Engineers India. The committee presented it to ministers and in various other fora, but since 2008 there has been, I would say, zero progress for 7 years, in spite of more than 7 presentations and various meetings, lobbying to get the project done, because the Institution of Engineers was convinced that this is the thing that has to be done to initiate a revolution in transportation. And we also observed that the Institution of Engineers study results and the more recent results of the master plan study are in agreement. So the proposal, the first step of railway electrification Sri Lanka to be between Veyangoda and Panadura, a route length of 64 kilometers with a track length of 156 kilometers. Why Panadura and Veyangoda, I have explained already. The power supply, as given in the conceptual design, will be overhead catenary wire to supply power, and the rails will be used as the return conductor. It's a 2-wire system with only 1 wire hanging above the railway track. The supply voltage, as it is almost becoming standard elsewhere, it will be 25 kV overhead. Of course, there will be dedicated electric multiple units to provide the service. Existing diesel electric power sets as well as the long distance diesel trains can operate on the same tracks. A glimpse of the sector to be electrified first, if you can see the color. Obviously, electrification has to be accompanied with modernization. I wouldn't believe that electrification should be limited to hanging a wire above the track and connecting the return conductor to the rail, and then we can be happy to say that we have electrified the railways. We need to leapfrog into the present from probably 100 years and into the future by incorporating a modernization drive into the electrification project. So the existing lines and stations have to be modified and modernized. We went on to study the electrical energy requirements of an electric multiple unit. In common language, it will be an electric power set. And Sri Lanka Railways conducted on behalf of Sri Lanka Institution of Engineers a test run on a power set, on a diesel electric power set, which engineer B.D. Rampala would have loved to do himself, and his present day successors helped us to conduct the study to arrive at a figure of 4.27 kilowatt hours per kilometer of electric multiple unit operation. We compared it with figures from other countries, and we found figures of about 7.6 kilowatt hours per kilometer, as well as for an express train 8.2 kilowatt hours per kilometer. Of course, high-speed trains spend more energy to overcome wind resistance than to overcome friction. So therefore, and since we are talking about suburban train electrification, we should look more into the figures from the suburban services elsewhere in the world. Of course, our study included an energy consumption of 5.5 kilowatt hours per kilometer without air conditioning, and later on we added some provision for air conditioning power as well. So this is a summary of the calculation. I will not go into details, just to tell you that some scientific studies have been conducted. Now to the costing. What this table says is that the energy cost, as seen from a financial point of view, of an electric train is half that of the cost of a diesel train. Determination of electricity tariffs, I would expect a revolution in electricity pricing to come along with railway electrification, because electric trains do not operate at peak hours of the grid. Hence their capacity cost responsibility per kilowatt will be lower than any other customer. Unfortunately, a household customer who is asking for electricity at the peak time should be fully responsible for the capacity cost of the system, because it comes in at the peak time. Sri Lanka Railways will directly purchase electricity from the transmission network. So therefore, Sri Lanka Railways will be a transmission customer. And for that reason alone, Sri Lanka Railways would not have to pay the approximately rupees 3 per kilowatt hour, which is the expense at the distribution for the distribution of electricity per kilowatt hour. And the distribution system, the trackside distribution system, to be maintained by Sri Lanka Railways. And most importantly, regenerative braking. Regenerative braking would allow the surplus energy to flow back into the grid. And the estimates are that in suburban operations, about 1/3 of electricity that is actually drawn in for acceleration and running can be drawn back to the grid during braking. Now the question many people ask, when we load the electricity system with electrified railways, will the electricity system collapse? Do we have upstream power system capacity to serve the trains? So the frequently asked questions are, does the grid have adequate capacity? I would say yes. A typical standard train needs only about 1.2 megawatt to accelerate. And the maximum demand for trains will be during the off-peak periods of the grid. Is the grid adequately reliable? I have to say, yes. I would say the transmission grid is reliable. And that reliability is higher than the reliability you and I experience at home, because there is a distribution network between you and the transmission grid. Based on published information, the two most recent transmission grid failures, the most recent one was last month, and the one before was in year 2009. So if we had electric trains, there would be 6-year gaps between a train stopping because of a grid failure. So I believe that is a reasonable level of reliability that we can live with. Of course, if you want to know what will happen when there is a power failure, I would expect Sri Lanka Railways also to have their own standby capacity to continue with a limited service during a grid failure. Is the grid becoming more reliable to serve the needs of the modern modes of transport? At this moment, we do not have adequate information about reliability improvements in the future. Is there adequate energy available? I would say yes. Railway electrification will improve the load factor of the system. Would not like to get you into electrical engineering, but this is the electricity demand profile of the country, which many of you would have seen over and over again. We do not use much electricity in the early hours of the morning, and then we use a little bit more electricity when we approach 6 a.m., then all of us are on the road. Lights are switched off and we get onto the road, and the demand decreases by about 100 megawatt. 100 megawatt. Why is that? Because we are on the road using diesel vehicles, petrol vehicles, or some other forms of transportation. So filling this valley with 20, 30 electric trains is not going to do any harm to the electricity grid. Similarly, look at the valley in the evening. Exactly at 5 o'clock when you leave office, the demand goes down. And that is because you don't use electricity to get home, but you use other modes of transport, get stuck in traffic jams, and keep cursing everybody else other than yourself. And that problem could be resolved and managed by the grid without any difficulty. So therefore, the grid is ready. The power engineers will make sure that the grid is ready and provide this capacity at the times that is required. Advantages of electric train services, if I may quickly summarize again: reduction in energy cost as much as 70%, Depends on how, of course, how electricity is priced. If it is truly cost reflective pricing, it will make it significantly cheaper. High acceleration and deceleration we have discussed, and the overall efficiency. Good for the environment, easy to maintain. Maintenance costs, the Indian figures are that maintenance costs are 50% when compared with diesel electric multiple units. And slower downtime for maintenance and passenger comfort. Less noise, less vibration, and air conditioning will be a standard service. Air conditioning will be a standard service. Of course, there are engineering challenges. Construction of the power supply and the catenary to be done while the existing system is in operation. We cannot stop the present services. They are in great demand, as you see, particularly in the morning and the evening. And several high voltage and medium voltage lines cross the tracks, and they have to be crossed with proper clearances and safety. Overall safety at road overpasses, passenger bridges, stations, and station roofs. Track and right-of-way improvements. In my view, electrification brings in higher speeds and certain safety concerns as well. We need to get into the habit as a policy to fence out the railway tracks, which will be much better. There will be obviously public protests when you fence out the railway tracks, but finally the whole system will be safe, not only for its electric, the safety against electric shock, but as well as general safety against being hit by a train. Continuing, signaling modifications will be required to manage the higher speeds, and modification to allow one rail to be used for the return conductor requires some engineering improvements after the designs. Improvement of level crossings, height restrictions to be enforced, and should all crossings be manned for safety? If not, should be monitored remotely for safety, so that we make sure that the level crossings are properly closed when a train approaches at high speed. Station modifications as well as improvement to the ticketing system, lifting the platforms to the floor level of the train for easy entry and exit of passengers, therefore saving stopping time at stations as well, automated ticketing and introduction of day tickets, rechargeable cards, and increasingly user-friendly facilities to encourage people to travel by train. So do not forget, we have nearly 400,000 people getting onto a train every day in the country, and that is a very large portion of our population. Almost 1 in 30 is getting into a train in this country every day. Of course, the project has several key components: the electric infrastructure, grid substations, overhead lines, track and signaling, modification to match the higher speeds, safety at level crossings. Rolling stocks, of course, there was a debate in the IESL committee whether we should support converting existing diesel electric multiple units to electric units. The recommendations that we received from people who know better would be to buy electric multiple units and continue to run the existing diesel electric units until the end of their life. So what will happen most likely is that once the electrification job is done, Sri Lanka Railways will continue to buy electric multiple units in preference to diesel electric units to serve the electrified sector. So what is expected is that there will be a dedicated through service between Panadura and Veyangoda in the phase 1 of this project. Dedicated through service, which means Veyangoda to Panadura and back Panadura to Veyangoda. And the maintenance hopefully will be at two ends without crowding out Maradana area. If you travel in the Maradana area, you will see a train takes about 10 minutes to get from Maradana to Fort because of the congestion. Quick insight into the economic internal rate of return, excluding the cost of power sets, assuming that we will have to provide this service to the 400,000 passengers who use the railways today, and almost 45% of them use this sector. And instead of buying or running diesel electric units, or diesel power sets. We buy and run electric power sets. So therefore, there is no incremental cost to buy power sets. The cost is for the infrastructure and maintenance. So the economic internal rate of return is 15%. And the economic internal rate of return, if you include the power set costs, is low at 3%. But the figure we should look at is the first one. Now, this is again without assuming any additional passengers using these services. But if we consider the time saving and the passengers who can be attracted to use this service, the economic benefit to the country would be enormous. Comparison of costs of running a train. Did you know that it costs about 1,400 rupees to run a train for a kilometer? And this exercise will actually bring it down overall only by about 125 rupees. But that saving is significant. Now to the good news. For the first time in the recent history of Sri Lanka Railways, I believe, a large investment to railways has been pledged by the Asian Development Bank. So thanks to the effort of the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Power and Energy, who submitted a joint cabinet memo about, I believe, 6 months ago to secure government approval for this project, which has been approved by the government. So we can now say that we are on the way to electrify our railways after a very long time of discussion, debate, studies and indecision. So what will happen is that a feasibility study and the detailed designs will be done under an Asian Development Bank grant. This has already appeared in the ADB website as well. And the Sri Lanka Railways will conduct competitive bidding to select the contractors and suppliers. And the construction will be between 2018 and 2020. The first sector will be Panadura Veyangoda, and that will be operational by 2020. And the estimated investment for electrification, modernization, and a comprehensive upgrade, including signaling, track modernization, rail station modernization, parking facilities, all this is estimated to be $300 million. Of course, this is many times the figure that was estimated in a previous 1968 study of 18 million US dollars. If we made that investment in 1968, perhaps we would be making a similar investment as of 300 million to modernize that system that we would have built 1968. So as I say, we can leapfrog into the future, but the Transportation Master Plan envisages 197 billion for railway development until 2020. So, and that works out to about $150 million of investment into the railways. Sorry, $1,500 million of investment into the railways, out of which the 300 million we are talking about now is only 1/5. So this good news is only 1/5 of the real good news that is required to keep the people moving in the Colombo metropolitan region on trains. But the good news is that the implementation of the Transportation Master Plan has begun. Even before the print is dry, the implementation has begun. Isn't it nice? The present status of the project, as I said, the government approval is done. Further studies have been approved based on a cabinet paper. Administrative structure is in place. The design team hopefully will be in the field very early next year. And they would have about 1 year of work to do a detailed feasibility study and a detailed design and prepare specifications in readiness for contractors to be invited to provide their offers. So what next? The most important thing is to secure this investment and use it wisely and fast for the benefit of the suffering masses. Now you might wonder why I say secure this investment. The government has decided, an international bank, which is a development bank, has committed funds. Everything is in place. But as you see, decision makers can change their mind. Decision makers can change their mind. I'm sure you would have heard of a variety of railway services being built by various investors. If I count the number of express services that were built between Colombo and airport, my count is 3. There should be 3 express train services between Colombo and the airport by now. And the most recent one was about 2 months ago. So those promises will come in and may derail this streamlined promise and the offer, because this is a government decision to be implemented through Sri Lanka Railways and to be funded through a regular mechanism in which Sri Lanka can select the contractor, Sri Lanka can select the level of technology we need. So it is different. So that's why I said we need to secure this investment and use it wisely and fast for the benefit of suffering masses, and to have a target, in my view, to double the number of passengers used in the electrified sector by 2025, which is possible. If you are provided with a fast service, reliable, on time, safe, reasonably priced, then obviously passengers will be attracted to use this suburban service. Of course, not to stop with this sector, the sector has to be expanded in several phases to cover the entire suburban network. And we do not have to wait until 2020 to start the second phase. The second phase can be started by 2018-29, while the first phase is under construction. So the phased out development can begin as we build the phase 1 as well. So what is the need of the hour? We need a revolution in thinking and approach to projects by Sri Lanka Railways. I think we are still looking for the champion of the caliber of engineer B.D. Rampala, who will take this challenge either individually or as a group. Hopefully by a group of engineers who are already working in Sri Lanka Railways to take this challenge, secure this investment, make the best out of it, and make it a reality. Not only Sri Lanka Railways, but definitely other agencies as well require new thinking. CEB to provide the power infrastructure and also to have a revolution in the pricing of electricity for railways traction according to the theory of costing and pricing of electricity. Because as you know, our electricity costing follows the theory, but the pricing does not follow the theory. But here in this case, the pricing also has to follow the theory, so that electricity purchased at the grid level should be cheaper, very significantly cheaper. And if you purchase it out of peak hours, it should be even further cheaper. Not because it is railway electrification, it is because the demand happens at a higher point in the network during off-peak hours. The Public Utilities Commission is there to ensure proper pricing of electricity. Sri Lanka Railways, of course, needs very significant support from all infrastructure agencies and regulatory agencies. Roads, water, irrigation, other transport and regulatory agencies, lands, environment, and of course the local authorities, which do take a long time to approve a plan. So what next? Expand the network to cover all suburbs of Colombo, as indicated by the economic evaluation in the Transportation Master Plan. The suburban network requires $1.5 billion for railway electrification and upgrades by 2020. And this 300 million, as I said earlier, is only 1/5 of the requirements. A fact, if there is a will and if projects proposals flow in, investments funds are certainly available. So there is no shortage of funds from multilateral and bilateral agencies if we are clear as to what we want. Clear at the government level, clear at the institutional level, clear at the professional institution level, clear in the minds of the people of the country. But if we hesitate, if we make decisions and pull them back, And if we turn away people who bring in good proposals, then hesitation might cause certain investments to go away or cancelled or postponed. So therefore it is a fact. If there is a will, funds are available to invest. Not merely as an investment, not because we just like to travel on an electrified railway. Funds that can be economically justified and financially justified to be good for this country. Back to Sri Lanka Railways performance. I do not expect railway electrification will make Sri Lanka Railways profitable. We can make Sri Lanka Railways profitable even today by proper pricing. But the government doesn't want to do it. So my argument is not that this is an exercise to make Sri Lanka Railways profitable. It's an argument that we provide a service at a particular cost today, and if we electrify and provide that service through electrified modes, then it is an economically viable investment for the country. To make Sri Lanka Railways profitable, you have to do other things. But it is more economical to the country. So, before I conclude, I was just thinking, what will our electrified train look like? So you can take a pic, or you can go to the internet and look at more pictures. Maybe the one in the middle perhaps looks elegant, nice, and the one on the right hand side is also nice. So I'm sure Sri Lanka Railways will have a competition among artists when they decide on the look of our electric multiple unit, or as the common man will call it, the electric power set. So, thank you very much. See you on an electric train in 2020.
President-elect Engineer Jayavilal Megoda, the room is full. This room would have been even fuller had not been for the weather. I know a lot of people, I already did the mathematics. Dr. Siyambalapitiya, there would have been roughly about 225 people here. Right now there are about 180 or 85, I did the count. So first thanks goes to all those who braved the weather and probably walked from town hall by foot, because your hybrid car probably stranded in the water. I don't know how many of you had that experience. So during my short but specific speech, I will thank people appropriately. So first of all, thank you all for coming here. Last night, there was heavy rain and I saw how many cars were stranded on the road. So the same thing is going on. I have the distinguished honor of being here, not because I'm the chairman of the Mechanical Engineering Sectional Committee. I single-handedly stopped fast-moving public electrified train on the spot. And I'm here to tell you the story. 10 minutes after this lecture, there'll be another lecture on that. I'm just kidding, but what I told you was true. Last year, when we did the same event, I spoke in Sinhala, if you recollect. The reason I'm speaking in English today, not because I went to school and learned English, I have to do something probably uttered in Spanish language, but what I have is in English, so I decided to speak today in English. Let me say this, let me quote. This is from Professor Amal's lecture 2 weeks ago, a slide. A developed country is not a place where poor have cars. It's where the rich use public transport. Quote, Enrique Penelos, Mayor Bogota, Colombia. I'm sure he spoke in Spanish language. It's a telling statement of what we should do in this country as well. So the richness of a country, the advancement of a country is not based on people buying leased cars by paying 90% lease, which is the new rule, and driving Marutis. We should have a good public transport systems. Secondly, very quickly, I would like to, after that statement, I would like to thank the IESL staff, first and foremost, people who who have been here, taking care of all this, Chamara, Tudor, the operations manager, the IT guys, and of course Arundhati, who organized everything and the logistics and everything. So thank you very much, before I forget that. Sir, there is a reason why we selected you. Rather, I decided first, and then I chatted with some of the senior colleagues of mine to make sure that you are the right person. I was pretty sure. Dr. Tilak Siyambalapitiya, I have been a follower of your work. There are two things that stands out as far as I'm concerned. One is you are an unemotional, fact-based guy. You speak from facts. So even if I disagree with you, we have a basis to discuss and argue about. Secondly, you are a good speaker. I have seen you delivering. So those were the two fundamental reasons. But I saw Dr. Gunaruwan walking in a little late. Is he there? I recognized him. Somewhere there, I think back rows, very back rows, yes. There was an electrifying speech, two speeches previous week at the LBO forum. There was a 2-day summit on megalopolis, or rather what people call megapolis. I call it megalopolis because that's the right word. 2-day session and the private public session, and then the week prior to that, under the minister himself, there was a 1-day event. And these two gentlemen from the academia had a powerful, powerful speeches that was not second to any other person who was there. They made it very clear what should happen in the public transport sector. That inspired me. I knew about you, sir. I spoke to my colleagues here, and it was a done deal. We were very clear who should come. So that's a second message. The third message, you are wondering why an electrical engineer is standing in a mechanical engineering sectional committee memorial lecture. Dear Rampala family, I said the other day, last year, for me, Engineer Rampala is not just a great engineer. He's not a terrific administrator. For me, he will be always a transformational leader. We are talking about transformations. Your last few slides were that. And you made a telling statement that people have to decide these things, because you basically, I don't know whether you didn't come out and said it the way somebody would say bluntly, but you were indicating even with such a great plan that we have here, there are possibilities of someone picking up having a fast train to go to an airport. So these are the times that we all have to get together, and we are, and you mentioned bilateral agreements and stuff like that. So we have to actually collectively work together and make the decisions, not only just as professionals, not as institutions, but as the people of this country. Therefore, discussions like these should happen in the public, as far as I'm concerned, and all of us are concerned, and we are working as a council to take it there. So next time, when we have something like this next year, I hope that'll be among 100,000 people understanding what's happening, because this knowledge has to get out, and we are doing our best by digitally recording these things and etc. Last but not least, dear family members of Engineer Rampala, you always grace this. Actually, I've come to know you now. I've met you last year, so I can recognize you from a distance. So thank you very much for being here. You were early, you were prompt, and you were on time. So thank you very much for doing that. Last but not least, I would like to have the support of our guest speaker today, Tilak, your support as an engineer, to run a series of public education forums on transport. And today, the fact that you are here with us as an electrical engineer, mechanical engineer sectional committee memorial lecture are the telling signs of time. Times are that mechanical, electrical, civil, your picture, the constructions, and IT, maybe chemical engineering. We all come together to solve problems today. It is the domain of these things are not in silos. So therefore, this is appropriate you are here. Next time we will have all the disciplines. And the fact that Sri Lanka is about to embark on the largest project in the history, if we do it, the money where to come from is still not clear. I have been to many sessions, still not clear. The megapolis project and the Western Province development and the 2020 plan for the country. That will be the largest biggest project for the country if it works out. So these things are important things for us as public, as educated people, as citizens of the country. So I would seek your help with so many others like Dr. Gunaruwan, Professor Amal, and so many others to create a series of forums, because Mechanical Engineering Section Company has decided to have 3 thrust areas this year. One of them is going to be transport, public transport. So I expect your help. And last but not least, I personally took personal time and effort to bring a lot of members who are not IESL members here, and I see them around here from various private sector organizations, etc. in droves. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you, past presidents and all of those who graced the occasion. I appreciate you braving the weather, but this is just the beginning of a journey that we plan to do this year. Transport is going to be a big theme item for this year, sir. So I hope to see you. One last thing, we have a special honor for you. Last year we had a lecture from Ranjit Sanaka. I think one thing I know about is a die-hard lover of railways, Sri Lankan railways. Please keep doing it. He has a special gift for you. I wanted that gift to be there because we communicated via email. So Ranjit, if you don't mind, please come here and award read the title. Golden Era of BD Rampala. That's done by Ranjit. Thank you. I think there's no rain out there. My car is stranded. Where's Badra? Badra, you got to forgive me. Your car is in front of me, so until I go, you can't go. So with that statement, two of us, you are an electrical engineer, I'm a mechanical engineer, probably none of us know how to fix that car, so we need somebody else, but let's figure out how to do that through synergy. Meantime, I wish you a great day, whatever that is left. Think about what we saw. Those are facts, those are important things personally as well as professionally. So thank you very much. Good night.